So a couple of years ago, I was at a party where a bunch of the runners kind of broke off into a group by themselves, and we started talking about why we liked running. And one of the runners, upon hearing my tale, said, "You know, you should really record this and post it." And I said, "That sounds like a great idea. I should do that like this week." And I didn't do it that week, and years have passed since then. And I still haven't, recorded it. I've thought about what I wanted to say, but I haven't actually, hit the button and recorded and gone from there. So 4 days before my fifth marathon, I decided, well, today's the day I'll talk about how I got started with running. And I actually got started with running, not through running, but with cycling. Before I got married, I biked a 25K for charity, and I had a blast doing it. Duffy and I went together. We had a really fun time. It wasn't super easy, but I got through it, and you know, it was an adventure. But 25K, that's about 17 miles, and that's on a bike. It's not running. I felt that was a good distance. And then the next year I did the same thing. And that was likely the only biking I did between the previous year and the next. And then the next year I did it again. The year after that, Duffy's uncle came to me and said, "Hey, I want to do it with you, but I want to do the 100K." So I'm like, well, I found the 25K pretty easy by the third time I'd done it. Maybe I'll train a little bit and I'll do it with him. After all, he's a middle-aged man. I say that now as I approach middle age myself, or maybe I'm there, I don't know. um, but there was some arrogance in me that said, well, if this guy can do it, so can I. So I went out to do it, only I really couldn't do it. Part of it was that I was using inappropriate gear. I was riding a hybrid bike on a very hilly 100K course. It was a Not only was it a hybrid, not a road bike, but it was a ill-maintained hybrid bike. But beyond that, I was overly arrogant. I didn't train properly. I thought I could do it. I went through some things in far too high a gear, just trying to plow through a hill, and then, was dead. So I get to the end of the ride somehow. I could not drive home. Duffy had to drive home. I remember just trying to walk up the stairs and having to crawl. It was a bad day, and that bad day turned into a bad week. And I told myself that really only crazy people bike that much. But then a friend of mine from high school started a bicycle trip from one end of the United States to the other, logging along the way. And he was logging 50, 60, 70, 100 miles a day. And I could say that, yes, only crazy people bike that much, but here was a guy that I knew, well, a guy that I knew. I knew he was crazy, but he was a kind of crazy that I respected. I grew up with this kid. So I started to think, well, you know what? Maybe if I treat cycling a little more seriously, I could do a little bit better. That winter, I went out and I got a road bike. As the snow started to clear, I started actually training and going out and finding hills and learning how to bike uphill. And I got pretty good on a cycle. That year, I rode the 100K, and I did it far more easily than I thought I would, just because I was prepared, I was ready, I was in better shape, and I knew what I was doing. So after that, I continued biking whenever I could, and it was a lot of fun. Biking to this day is just a whole lot of fun for me. Right around this time, I started cycling when I could to work. This is before kids, so the extra time spent in a commute didn't really matter all that much, and it was fun. To pass the time as I was cycling, I started listening to audiobooks. This all does tie together when we get to running, I promise. So I was listening to audiobooks. I was cycling when I could. I wasn't necessarily eating right because I was being so active, and I think for the most part I was, maintaining my weight, keeping relatively healthy, we'll say that. But I really, really got into the habit of listening to audiobooks while I worked out, specifically during these cardio sessions, because that's what cycling is, just heavy, heavy cardio. We now fast forward just a little bit and to the age of Facebook, and another high school friend of mine mentions that she is going to run a Susan G. Komen 5K in New Jersey, and she wants people to run with her. And I sign up. I figure I'm doing, I can cycle, I could cycle a whole lot. It can't be all that much different to start running, so I started running. But I quickly found out that, they are different skills. You can't just pick up one and go to the next and then back to the other. They're actually very good for cross training one to the other, but it's not something you could just pick up and run just because you happen to be able to cycle for a bit. So I was doing Couch to 5K, and as I was doing Couch to 5K, I was listening to audiobooks. And listening to audiobooks, I ran across Born to Run by Chris McDougall. And in Chris McDougall's book, first I thought it was a work of fiction. Here I was training to do 5K, or 3.1 miles, or as I sometimes hear, 5K is an impressive distance for those people who don't understand the metric system. As I was training to do 5K, trying to work up, running a mile at a time without stopping, there were these stories of people who are running 100 miles at a time without stopping, and I'm like, well, that's just fantastical. That obviously this is a well-crafted piece of gonzo journalism, and I actually stopped listening for a little bit. But then I went on Wikipedia, found out that the Leadville 100 is a real thing, and that people actually do run 100 miles at a time. And I was intrigued. In this book, one of the main characters is Barefoot Bob, or Barefoot Ted. I don't even remember now. It's been so long. Anyway, he runs not, and excuse my dogs upstairs, I would stop them, but I don't think they're coming across that loud, and I don't feel like re-recording all this. Anyway, he runs barefoot when he can, otherwise he wears Vibrams. And I'm like, well, that's an odd choice. I look them up and find out that they're an actual shoe company online. But I continue doing my running. But as I'm running, I'm getting through about 10, maybe 15, maybe just a little bit more time that before my right knee, my left hip, and my lower back start to really complain. It's just not any fun. And at the speeds I was going, I wasn't going more than a mile and a half, and that's half a 5K. So I was getting discouraged. There was one day, again, this is before kids, it was absolutely gorgeous out. I had something like 2 hours to kill. I went out for a run, and within the first half mile, my lower back just said, nope, you're not doing this. So I got very, very frustrated. I got worried about whether or not I'd be able to complete a 5K. And then I just decided I'm going to take a lesson from Barefoot, whatever his name. I really think it's Ted. I'm going to take a lesson from him, kick off my shoes, and go. So I was running on a trail that had distances marked. I now know that the distances as they are listed are actually wrong. I thought I was running 0.7 miles. I was actually running just shy of 0.5 miles per loop. But I went from, running the half mile where my back hurt, and then I ran 10 loops, and I felt great. So that weekend I went out and I found a pair of Vibrams, and I put them on. I started running, and I had a lot less pain. Part of me wonders if this is psychosomatic, that I was expecting pain, or I didn't really want to run, but I was, I was dealing with pain, and now I wasn't. I was able to run longer and longer distances with fewer and fewer drawbacks. During this one barefoot run, though, I experienced what I can only describe as the runner's high for the first time. And it's when you are running and you're going about, and all of a sudden, well, any workout, I'm painfully aware of what I'm doing. When I start to lift, I realize, oh dear God, this sucks right off the bat. The thing is, it sucks, but you could feel yourself getting stronger. When I go out to cycle, it's kind of fun. When I go out to swim, my only real thought is don't drown, and I actually look like somebody who's actively trying not to drown, not somebody who's swimming. But when you go out to run, every time I go out to run, it's why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? This is stupid. This sucks. Stop. Just walk. You know how to walk. You're good at walking. The runner's high is when that kind of disappears and all of a sudden you're just running. It's just you and your thoughts and whatever you happen to be listening to and the scenery as it slowly changes because I'm a slow runner. Um, but it's no longer step after step after step after step. Sure, your feet are still going, but you kind of glide. You're in a different plane of existence if that exists. You're just, you're enjoying yourself. So I experienced the runner's high and I wanted more and more of it. So I ran what I thought at the time was 7 miles. I ran 5 miles probably, but that was more than the 5K that I needed to do, and not so long after I got together with my friend and we ran the 5K together, and I just continued running. And I just added a little bit every time, and I finally realized that if I can continue adding just a little bit to any given long run in such and such a time, I will have these 26-mile long runs. And well, hey, November, Harrisburg Marathon, that's when I'd be getting there. So let's do it. So I did. My first sanctioned race was a 5K. My second one was a marathon. And I just haven't really looked back. Things have changed considerably for me since then. I actually don't run nearly as much as I used to. Running just takes up a lot of time, but every time I run, I kind of say, wow, this is really fun. And now I'm 4 days shy of my fifth marathon. This will be my third running of the Harrisburg Marathon. And I'm far more confident as a runner than I've ever been, despite the fact that I haven't run since my last half marathon, which was a couple of weeks ago. And this is a distance that I haven't tried since April. But I'm confident. I'm looking forward to the run. I'm really looking forward to the run. Uh, and I will be, posting all about it afterwards. But that's how I got into running. I was cycling, and I thought I was doing a good job, so I went to running, and I fell in love with running, and it was fun. So, thanks for listening.